Okay, step number 47 is the first step in building the shocks. And it's actually pretty easy. It's not as complicated as it looks. We're going to break this down into a couple little exercises during this section here. The first thing that we want to do is to build the top caps here. So go ahead and get all of your pieces out for that. There's going to be 4 of this unit, which is the AX80035-1. So I suggest that you do these all at one time. So get all 4 of them out. Make sure you trim all the tree spars off. Then you're going to get 4 of the larger O-rings. The direction shows them to be black. However, in my kit, they are a clear silicone. And then you're going to get out, for each cap, 2 of the smaller silicone O-rings, and then the plastic piece, which is an AX80035-5, and then the end cap, which is AX80035-2. And don't confuse that with the pieces that are in your plastic bag, or in the bag that you opened up with all the other shock parts. You can see that this is a much different part than this one is. This one actually has a little cup. See if we can get that focused in. You can see how that one's actually a little cup. Okay, very simple. We're going to build 4 of these. I'm going to walk you through doing 1 of them, and then we will have you off camera build or I'll build off camera the other ones. First, I want to say that we're going to use some of the grease that came with the kit to lubricate the silicone O-rings. You can use the shock oil that came with it. It's a little thin, but you can also use the silicone diff oil that came with it if you want. I'm just going to use grease. There's also a really good product put out by Associated called Green Slime, which is made very specifically for this. Doesn't take much. Just going to put a little dab on my finger and rub it in, and just coat the little O gaskets with it. You don't have to use a lot, you just want them coated. And then go ahead and wipe your fingers off before you start building here. Okay, the first one, we're going to take the top cap here, and we're going to slide the larger of the O-rings over the threads. And drop it down into the little groove that is on there. This is what it's going to look like. Next, we're going to take one of the little O-rings, and we're going to push it down inside of the hole here. And try to make sure it's as flat as possible. You don't have to go all the way in, just get it in there. Then we're going to take the little plastic piece and push that O-ring down with that. And then we're going to set the second O-ring in on top of there and push it down in. And everything should line up nice and flat, just like so. From there, we're going to take the end cap and click it on. And that's what it's going to look like. You'll need to assemble 4 of those, 1 for each shock, and we'll be right back. The next step we're going to do is to screw the caps that we just built into the shocks. At this point it doesn't matter, everything's the same, so just go ahead and screw all 4 of them in. You'll notice that there's threads here, and then there's an inside threads on the top, or actually that's the bottom of the shock. No, that's the top. No, that's the bottom. Yeah, in the bottom of the shock. So let's go ahead and screw it in there. They are plastic. I find myself having to back it on and off a few times to make sure that I get the thread right. You don't want to cross thread it. And then that silicone gasket is going to hit. And that's when you want to go real slow and make sure that you don't pinch that gasket. That gasket has to go down inside the body of the thread, or the body of the shock as you thread it in. Just keep threading it in. Hand tight is fine. If you want to use a little wrench or something on there, just be real careful. They're plastic, and they really don't need to be much more than as tight as you can get it by hand. And that's what they're going to look like. And there's not going to be any gap here. Alright, now that we're looking at the shocks, you're going to see that there are two front shocks, which are the shorter ones, and two longer shocks, which are the rear shocks. For now, let's work on the front shocks, so we're going to set the two rear ones to the side. Now we're going to install the pistons onto the shock shaft. If you take a look at the shock shaft, it is threaded on both ends. This end here has a little shoulder on it that's not threaded. This end has a little flat spot on here. We're going to put the pistons onto the end that has the little shoulder. You can do this on all four shafts. There's going to be two shafts that are longer than the others. But go ahead and do all four because they are the same. We're going to take one of the little washers and put it down over the shoulder until it rests on the end of the shaft here. Then we're going to push the piston down. All four pistons are the same. So we're going to go ahead and set that down on top next. Then we're going to put one more washer on. And then we're going to use the silver nylock nut. Go ahead and start that by hand. Now you're going to have to hold the shaft. We're going to hold it with a pair of pliers on the flat portion here. If you have shock pliers, a very specific pair of pliers, that's great. What we don't want to do is there's a coating on the shafts here, and we don't want to mar that. So I'm just going to use a little piece of plastic over here, and I'm going to grab the pliers on the flat spot, and I'm doing that so I don't mar or damage the coating. And we're going to tighten the nut down on here just until it touches, just touches. So you'll be able to screw it on, and it doesn't take a lot of pressure, and as soon as you feel that touch, stop. And basically that shaft is going to be almost dead even with the top of the nut, maybe a little bit recessed. But you don't want to over tighten that. If you over tighten it, you're going to deform the piston, and you don't want that to happen. So go ahead and do that for all four of your shafts, the two long ones and the two short ones. Rolling all over the place. The next step here is an easy one. Go ahead and get four of the little shock ends out, which are the AX80034-8, and then also our very familiar little AX0018-1s, and go ahead and put those together. Go ahead and do all four. And then we are going to install the shock shafts into the tubes. We're going to get a little bit of grease, and we're going to put it on the threads. I'm going to suggest you use grease on this. We're going to put just a little bit of grease on the thread. That does two things. First thing it does is it keeps those threads from cutting the little O-ring that's in there, and secondly, it helps us put the end on. So this is the caps we put on earlier. There's the open end of the shock. We're going to go ahead and put the shock in, and you're going to feel around and find the hole, and very, very gently push that up through. And make sure you're straight when you're doing it, because you do not want to cut or mar or put any gashes into the silicone O-rings that are in there. Go ahead and extend it out fully. Now, when you're doing this, again, you have two different shocks. You have a short shock, and this is a rear, which is a long. You want to make sure that you put the long shock shafts into the long tubes, and the short shock shafts into the short tubes. Okay, and just double check before you do that. Go ahead and pull it in and out a few times, and it distributes some of the grease that's on there. And they should go in and out fairly smoothly. There'll be a little bit of restriction there, but it shouldn't bind. Next, let's take the little spacer. They call it a bump stop. And we are going to put this with the nose. There's a little bevel on there, you can see. We're going to put that with the nose towards the shock shaft. Just like so. You can slide it on there, it doesn't matter. Now we're going to screw in the shock end onto the shaft. And we're going to go ahead and get that started. You're going to want to get it on as far as you can by hand. There's going to come a point here where the shaft is going to start spinning, and at that point you're going to want to hold the shaft. And we're going to find our little piece of plastic here for our pliers. Lost my other little piece, but we're going to put that over the little flat spot and go ahead and hold it with the pliers and continue to put the end on. You want to put the end on until there's no thread left. Just screw it on by hand, and as soon as there's no thread left, you'll feel a little bit more resistance than what there is, and you'll go ahead and just stop. And I'll get a close-up here so you can see there's no thread, but you don't want to over-tighten it. And that's what your finished shock will look like. This is one of the longer rear ones. Go ahead and do the same for the other three shocks, and then we'll move on to the next step.